Greetings, this is Sister Machi with Assume Naturals, and I just wanted to chime in. So I did the two readings just because Spirit told me to do it, and I went forward with it. Again, I am in a really interesting place where I'm just kind of sharing as I feel, not really totally about views, but more about just getting my voice out there for myself. And some days it really feels good, and then some days I feel vulnerable. I'm in an interesting place in my life. So anyhow, so I was inspired to do this particular talk based on a video I saw about depression. And the depression is definitely something that has visited me throughout my life. Of course, at one point I didn't have a title for it, and I've seen depression in a lot of women throughout my life, and even in my family. Sadness, depression, even numbness. So I wanted to talk a little bit about that today, just off my heart. And a lot of people have sayings about depression, that depression is you needing deep rest, or depression is looking at the past and staying in the past and not being in the present. And anxiety is looking at the future and not looking in the future, I guess with worry and fear, that type of thing. So yeah, I've heard that too, and that resonated as well, but it didn't take away those feelings of depression. So, and believe me, this rising, I did some Kundalini. I actually did a Kundalini exercise. It wasn't necessarily the yoga per se. I did a gong meditation, so that was really wonderful to just open up the heart chakra and allowing that energy of the gong to just resonate my body. And also, saying Sat Nam, and all of the different sayings that they say in Kundalini Yoga. I've been studying Kundalini Yoga for years on my own, and I know of Kundalini Yoga instructors as well. So I really respect the practice. I don't participate in it as I should, but I do incorporate it in my work when I help others as well. So back to my discussion about depression. So depression is really, sadness. I feel the energy that's going on the global scale, and that energy feels pretty low. And me being an empathic person, I feel it. You know what I'm saying? Like the quietness, sometimes I can feel it in the air. It's thick. The worry, the anxiety, the stress, depression, I feel sometimes is something that is passed down through the lineage as well. I know women in my family who suffer with depression and who has either had bouts of depression or who conceal it and don't really talk about it. And I remember having my bouts of depression starting as a teenager, due to outside forces and just feeling like I was in hopeless situations, whether it be, the environment I lived in at the time. I experienced loss at a very early age, with childhood friends and stuff through, violence. And, violence was definitely one of my first experiences. Was pretty young. Was not even, depression actually started earlier. than my teenage years when I think about it. Just in my home with my father, with the energy he carried and what it caused for a child. And they say children are very resilient, and I was, but I also was sad. Okay, I was sad because I had to be in a very unsafe situation for years. So me and my mother, leaving that situation allowed me to open up and allowed me to be a kid. However, I experienced so much throughout life, so that sadness kind of went with me throughout life. Because, at that time people weren't taking their children to therapy and things like that. It wasn't even happening, right? And then, I had some traumatic injuries that happened to me. As a child, I broke my front tooth, very young. And so that carried a situation where I had to go to, that time I couldn't get permanent teeth per se because, I wasn't done growing. I hadn't, so I had to deal with that as a kid in terms of my mother having to get temporary work done for me throughout my life, and, being teased about my tooth, not in terms of it being chipped, because my mom took care of it at that time, but as the body changes, the material that they use for my tooth was not the exact color of my other teeth, so it stood out. And so that made me sad in terms of I wasn't able to smile the way I would like to. I was shy. I didn't want to always show my teeth because my mother had to go through different phases with getting it replaced because it would turn another color. It didn't look the same as my other teeth and all this kind of stuff. And that brought on some sadness and depression, as a child. And I'm just thankful for my mom. She did the best she could with what she had, and so throughout life and relationships, friendships, that weren't friends, feeling isolated or, feeling as if I didn't have true friends. This started really early with that. So I put my value in what other people thought of me very early. Being an only child. Well, actually being an only child with my mom. My father got other children. That's a whole nother conversation. But so depression has sadness and depression. I kind of put that together because maybe it wasn't depression earlier, but it changed into depression as I grew older. And so depression has been there, throughout my life. And I know that it's because I care. I care about a lot of stuff. I carried a lot of stuff on my shoulders. I've seen a lot of stuff. I've seen the lowest of lows in terms of not just my life, but other people's lives. I've seen the lowest of lows in terms of loss and addiction and people losing everything and trauma, so that brought on a lot of the depression. Your environment too can really affect your well-being. If you live in an environment that is riddled with violence and riddled with poverty and even music that's very harmful for the spirit, right? All of that affects you. All of that affects how you see the world. It all affects how you deal in the world, how you see yourself. Under all of that is patriarchy, is misogyny. I would even say white supremacy. That is under it. Racism, sexism, all of those things, all of these isms and schisms, as they say, is a part of that. And I'm just plopped in the middle of that. trying to figure out my way, right? Trying to figure out who am I in all of this, living in poverty, trying to figure out how I'm going to get out of poverty. School is supposed to be the answer. School is one part of it, but it's not everything. Because you don't realize at that time that capitalism is a system. You don't realize at that time that you are just a product of that system. And they see you as that. They don't, you're just young and trying to figure out life. And you don't realize these people don't care nothing about you at the end of the day. At the end of the day, they do not care about you, and you don't realize that as you're trying to find your way and do all the best you can. You're just trying to be the best person you know how to be. So I missed out on some crucial raising. Now, and this is no reflection of my mother. This is just the times I was in, as well as the lack of family around, because my family lived in different places. So I didn't have my family to steer me in the right directions at times. So I had to figure out a lot of stuff on my own, being a latchkey kid. And I wasn't in all of the different programs and things that I should have been in at that age. I was pretty young. I was in the Girl Scouts. But I had an incident with that, and that ended. So I didn't go through all of the different things with Girl Scouts. So, I was a teenager living in, in environments that was not very good. And because of that, I do have a stronger, I've seen a lot. And so because I've seen a lot in life, early on, it is a trauma. I have come to the realization that I've seen a lot of that. And so the depression piece, I remember, just being in a low place. I was in a horrible relationship. I was with someone who had it was like trauma bonding. And he had just the worst life experiences that anyone could even, I don't know how I attracted that. I recognized I had some lessons to learn, but some things had happened and I was at one of my lowest places. I was working a very toxic job too, when I was working 11 to 7 shift with a very racist supervisor. I was working 7 days a week and I was working 11 to 7 in a plant situation. And it was a big plant where we were doing a lot of production work, and I worked 11 to 7. And I was working with a very racist white male, supervisor. And I was having a lot of problems in my so-called love life, as well as just trying to figure out my life, because, I had to leave college, because my mother got ill and I had to take care of that situation as much as I could. I was under too much stress to handle working. I tried to work and go to school full time, and it was very hard to maintain. So I had to leave school and keep my job, which made me very depressed. And again, I was having other issues. So that was the first time that the depression was so low that I didn't want to be here anymore. And I went to try to get help, and they put me on medication. At that time it was like Prozac and Buspar. They didn't really help me. It wasn't that, I knew then I didn't want to be on medications, but I took the medications because at that time I didn't have the tools. I didn't have as they say, the bandwidth. I didn't have the knowledge of how to handle my anxiety, my panic attacks, and depression. So again, even though I was going to get medication and all that stuff, I had horrible. They were Indian too. They were Indian doctors, but they did not show any compassion for me. I wasn't getting what I needed to get. I didn't have the knowledge to say this is the type. I knew I wanted a black doctor, but I didn't know how to go about it. I went for the first appointment I could get to try to get some help, and that's the first thing they did was to give me medication. So that didn't go well, and my life still was falling apart, so I can't say all the things that were going on, but depression has been a thing, not with me, but a lot of black women. A lot of black women carry heavy energy that has accumulated over the years from trauma, from stress, from raising children, from going to school and all of the stress with that, having to work jobs that they do not connect to and love, being in toxic relationships, being in toxic friendships, living in environments that they may have been very poor or dealing with some sort of poverty, not having enough empathy from others, eating the wrong foods and being, in a toxic cycle. I see, and that's the reason why I can relate to a lot of women who come see me. I can feel a lot what they've been through. I know, and in some cases I've been through more than them, but not always. But the depression piece, the lowest. I've felt that. And again, this is an opening up for me for my own therapy, my own healing. So I may not in this one broadcast talk about everything, but I do know that my younger self lacked compassion for my own self. As my younger self, I didn't receive the love I deserved or needed, or the community I needed at that time. I've seen and heard so many horror stories from other girls my age at that time that it was normalized. But I knew it was something wrong with it. I always had that in me. I always had a deeper knowing. I just, again, didn't have the right people around me. I had a lot of haters, silent haters, just mean girls around me, right? And a lot of men who saw that spiritual, that light within me, that energy within me, and they loved that about me, but they also drained me and took a lot from me. So, I just wanted to put this out there because I was inspired by another YouTuber who is really just very honest in her transmission. And I love that about her being younger than me, actually.